Alrighty, welcome back everyone. Scarlane here, bringing you a new Wolcen video. Now, today we're going to be finally releasing the anticipated crit DOT mage that I've made. I've spent now 174 hours in Wolcen. So 174 hours, and I would say 95% of that has been theory crafting and putting this build together. This is taking a significant amount of time. We all know the current meta of, Wolcen. As of filming this video, it's February 25th, 2020. If you're watching this video in the future, things may change, but the current meta of Wolcen is Bleeding Edge because it's so overpowered. Everyone's running a Bleeding Edge build. So I wanted to come up with something that was still able to do endgame content without utilizing Bleeding Edge and its broken abilities. Now, before you get all super pissed off at me, this build does have Bleeding Edge in the rotation. However, I'll explain how we're not using it as damage and we're actually using Bleeding Edge as resource regeneration. So I've put in a lot of time into this build, 174 hours. It is a mage build, it's a caster build, and it works out pretty well. We're doing level 187 content. We can do 187 Untainted, level 187 maps, whatever the case may be. You can do end game content with this. Now, this build will actually become better in time because there are broken mechanics within the game currently that unfortunately we need to be utilizing and they're not working. So I'm talking about Life Leech and how it interacts with Force Shield. So I'll explain that more in the video. Let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so we're going to break this video down into parts. The first part, we're going to take a look at our statistics. The second part, we'll take a look at the skills. The third part, we'll take a look at the passive trees. And then finally, we'll also look at the gear and what you want to strive for. So right off the bat, we're just going to take a look at our statistics and our attributes here. So I'm dumping points into ferocity as well as wisdom, and then what's ever left over into toughness. So we want ferocity because this is relying on critical hits. So you can see our spell critical chance is 39.3%. This is actually pretty high. We crit with our spells very often. Wisdom becomes your secondary stat, and this is, your status element chance. So this is with spells, of course. So we have a 35.5% chance. Again, that's actually kind of high. We're always going to be putting the elements on targets. So, and then finally, you want to dump the rest of your remaining points into your health and force shield. Now, you're relying on force shield over health. You can see I only have 6,000 health, but I have 122,000 force shield. So once we go into the passives, I'll explain this a little more. Now, you can distribute these however you want. If you want to get your spell crit chance a little lower, but that's up to you. This is a good ratio for me currently. So if we look at our statistics overall here, main things that I want to talk about is the crit weapon damage. So we have 536% crit. So every time our spells crit, we're doing, 536% more critical hit damage. So that's huge. Now, our survivability, we're going to talk about the force shield. So again, I said I have 122,000 force shield. Our force shield regeneration is 62,000. And our regeneration delay is 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, you're going to regenerate 62,000 force shield. It's almost instantly. So every 4 seconds, your force shield should be back up. And once you intertwine this with Life Leech, and once they fix Life Leech, this build literally becomes unkillable at that point. Because unfortunately, that's where this build struggles is. We're not using block chance, we're not using dodge. You can look at my resistance. I have no resistance, guys. 11% physical, 23% elemental, and 17% for occult. This build has no resistance. This build will be relying on lifesteal, but as of right now, filming this video, it needs to be fixed. So let's go ahead and look at the elements here. Of course, you want a max stack at 30. Base is 10, and then you can get another 20 through the passive system. So we're utilizing this, obviously. So our stun chance is irrelevant, but it is 41%. So now poison chance is 41%, and look at our DOT damage here, guys. Almost 10,000. So 10,000 for poison stacks, which is huge. Bleed, again, almost 10,000, 9.8. Our burn is 9k. Our freeze is going to be 41%. The shock, again, is 9k damage. And then our stasis, unfortunately for stasis, weakness, and cursed, which is the occult damage, it doesn't show you your damage. These do damage. Because stasis is ether damage, weakness is sacred damage, and cursed is shadow damage. These do damage, guys. Unfortunately, it just doesn't show. So my stasis chance is 38%. However, it's almost 100%. The weakness is 38%. My curse is also 38%. As far as resources go, not anything, too huge. We have 1,400 willpower. And then you want to stack some conversion items, which I'll show you guys when we go over the items. So that is just a nice little glimpse of the stats. So we'll move right into the spells. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and take a look at the spells and the rotation that you're going to be using and utilizing. Now, of course, we're going to be taking Anomaly. It's huge. These are the runes on the screen that you're going to be using. So you're going to take the Increase the Area of Effect Damage Vortex, Increase Damage Afflicted by Elements. We're going to take Increase the Skill Duration. The Skill Vortex pulls enemy multiple times, which is huge. You definitely want to be utilizing this. Then you want to take the skill allows the casting of 2 vortexes. Again, huge. You want to make sure you're taking this. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with the increase element damage to enemies inside the vortex. Next, on our rotation, we are actually using Solar Flare. So, damage dealt by the area effect increases over time. Increase the tick rate, which is faster DOT damage. We're going to be converting this to fire damage. So it is base of sacred damage. We're going to be converting that to fire damage. We're going to take increase critical damage. We're going to take area of effect becomes static. So when you cast this in comparison to your anomaly is going to suck all the enemies in. You're going to cast your solar flare on top of that, and everything should be dead. And then finally, increase element damage. Third on the list, now this may change down the line, but we are using Bulwark of Dawn right now for mainly survivability reasons. Once they do fix Life Leech and it works with our Force Shield, we might be able to actually swap this out down the road. So we are using Increased Duration. Area of Effect deals damage now. Area of Effect regenerates Force Shield. So this is how we have our survivability. We're going to be using Reduce the Willpower Cost, Increase the Duration, as well as the Healing Area of Effect follows the player. So even if you want to be on top of the enemies when you cast everything, which I'll show you in the rotation here, but you want to be on top of the enemies, so this follows you in case you do have to evade or move. That way you're still getting the healing effects of it, but if you have to dodge and move away from the enemies, so you want to make sure you're taking this rune. Next on the list, we do have Consuming Embers. So we're going to be increasing the cast speed, increased number of projectiles, but each projectile damage is reduced. We're going to be using the Increase Area of Effect, converts the fire damage to lightning damage. This is important. And then we also are going to add another projectile. So now this has 3 projectile costs. Our right-click ability is going to be Winter's Grasp, and this is our CC ability, our crowd control. This is another reason this build relies on survival, because remember, we're not using block, we're not using dodge. This is our only survivability until the company fixes Life Leech. So basically, you're freezing enemies with this. So you want to use Reduces Cooldown, Increase the Area of Effect. Winter's Grasp is cast in a circle around the cursor. So this makes you be able to cast it wherever you're clicking. We have leave a damaging area on the ground for a few seconds. And then finally, reduces cooldown. When you have both cooldown features, it's an instant cast, guys. Now finally, this is... we all know what Bleeding Edge is, right? Now, I know a lot of people out there are going to be mad because I'm technically using Bleeding Edge, but this is not a Bleeding Edge build. You don't need Bleeding Edge. We're not using this for damage. I've done so much testing, and this is, Bleeding Edge, believe it or not, is the fastest converter of resources between willpower and rage. So you're going to dump all of your willpower pretty fast, right? You're going to be spamming abilities that are going to just deplete your willpower. Well, you need something to bounce the rage back into willpower. So once your willpower decreases down into rage, you need something to bounce that back. And Bleeding Edge is the fastest spell in the game currently that will do that. I've literally tested everything in the game. All the spells in the game, and Bleeding Edge is the fastest. Now, Bleeding Edge is going to provide us with some damage, but the passives that we're using in the skill nodes does not utilize Bleeding Edge to most of the other Bleeding Edge builds out there that are utilizing Bleeding Edge. You're not going to see, 20 million hits, 40 million hits with Bleeding Edge. We're not using Bleeding Edge for damage. So I just want to express that, before you jump in the comments section and start, keyboard warring me because, oh, well, you said this was an endgame build that didn't have to utilize Bleeding Edge. Well, it doesn't. You're not using Bleeding Edge for damage. So later in the video, I'll show you, we'll do a treasure map on level 187. We're not utilizing this for the damage. So we are going to increase the projectile speed, cast to the cursor location, so again you can cast it around the map, it's not casting around you. It has life leech on it, which will help us when again they fix the force shield life leech ratio. And then axe continues to spin after being thrown and increase the damage per element stack. So like I said, we're not using this. There's only one other thing that you can possibly use, and that is the turret. The turret has a fast conversion rate as well, but the turret is slow, right? So the turret's going to provide you with damage, but the damage is irrelevant. You want something that's just so fast that your willpower will convert. So let's go ahead and look at our spells here, because remember, we are utilizing a DOT Crit Mage build that's built around the element system. So when we look at Anomaly, and we look over here, we're getting Stasis and Poison, right? So now we look over here for Solar Flare, we're getting Burn stacks and more Poison stacks. We look at Bulwark, we're getting Freeze and we're getting Poison. We look at Consuming Embers, now we have Shock and now we have Poison. We look at Bleeding Edge, we're getting Burn and Bleed. And then our Winter's Grasp is Freeze and Poison. So why is this a big deal? Because if you look, there is 9 elements in the game, right? You have Physical, Toxic, Rend, Fire, Frost, Lightning, Ether, Sacred, Shadow. You want to apply as many of these as possible because one single monster can have 30 stacks of every one of these elements. So you want to try to get as many elements in your rotation as you possibly can. So we're not using Physical, right? We have Toxic is pretty much our main one. We have Rend. We have Fire. We have Frost. We have Lightning. We have Aether. Shadow. I think the only thing this build is missing is Sacred. I don't think we have anything providing us with weakness stacks. So Sacred damage is your weakness stacks. And that's not a big deal because if we look at weakness, it reduces the damage dealt by the target. So as long as you're not getting hit, and like I said, I can't reiterate this enough, once the company fixes Life Leech, it's not going to matter because you're going to be Life Leeching and you're going to become invincible anyway. You're going to be literally unkillable once they fix the Life Leech problem, which we will further discuss in the passive tree when we get there. So weakness, you don't really need it. So we're sacrificing Sacred damage here. But we are doing Toxic, Rend, Fire, Frost, Lightning, Ether, and Shadow. So that's huge. I mean, that's absolutely huge that you're getting every ailment except 2, right? You're not getting your physical damage and you're not getting Sacred. So that's very important to be stacking these DOTs. Now, very quickly, I'll show you the rotation and what you want to be striving for. So if you're, in an expedition, you want to gather up all the enemies, try to get them as close as possible. You want to drop your double anomaly. You want to drop your solar flare on top of that, cast your bulwark, cast your lightning, and then keep an eye on your rage conversion. You don't want to actually use bleeding edge. You can pop a bleeding edge in that rotation when you do get some, but the main focus is using Winter's Grasp. So you want to freeze your enemies during your rotation, guys. So what a fast rotation will look like is you'll double pop your anomaly, cast that, and you want to make sure you're just spamming freeze. Because as long as your enemies are frozen, they can't do anything to you. So you want to gather all the enemies up. You want to make sure they're froze. So you double cast your anomaly, solar flare, bulwark, spam some lightning, watch the rage. So go ahead and put your bleeding edge, watch your willpower go back up, and all while you're trying to maintain freeze, guys. That's literally the whole rotation. And everything will melt. You're stacking so much element damage, everything will literally fall over dead. Even at 187, where the mobs just have millions upon millions upon millions of HP. So one more time here. You want to cast double anomaly, solar flare, bulwark, go cast your lightning, get a bleeding edge in there to get some of that rend damage, and all while maintaining your freeze. So that wraps up the spells. We'll take a look at the passive tree here next. So here, let's go ahead and take a look at our overall passive. Now remember, this is actually a maxed out build. So not only do you have all the passive points through the leveling, but you also have that the passive +1 ability from the town. So keep that in mind. I will actually leave links in the description to some third-party sites where you can, look at this more in depth and save it as you will. But we're going to quickly go through this. So I'll try to explain it as we go along. So we do want to utilize crit. We need all the crit ones, right? So if you start from the red, you're going to get crit damage here, crit damage here. We're going to get a cooldown reduction, more crit damage, and then, of course, the 60% crit chance. So if we break off and go down below, we have max HP, and that takes us into our purple path. So now we have +20 willpower, spell damage, force shield, that goes over to the max willpower and rage, max willpower, rage. Now we go down into the third tier here. So you're going to take the force shield here, occult damage. You're going to take Occult Affliction as well as the bonus for it. You come over here to get the Force Shield and the Force Shield Regeneration Delay Reduction. You're going to get the Element Damage. You're going to grab this here, which doubles your max Force Shield. And then you're also going to get the Element Damage here. So now we're going to break off down here to the green, which is attack speed, which is irrelevant. You're going to come right up into it. The only thing that you're going to benefit here is the frost damage and the force shield. And then -5% move speed, 14% more critical hit damage, and we're actually taking acute tracking. While in combat, you gain cold-blooded every 2 seconds, up to max of 10, and it's 6% damage. It's 60% damage on this node, guys. As long as you're in combat and you have max stacks, and if you're doing endgame endgame content, you're going to be in combat for a while, so there's no reason that you can't get all full 60% damage buff from this. So now let's go directly up here. We're going to go into spell damage, element damage, element damage. Come over here to get the 10% reduction, 8% damage, 25 element chance for occult damage, and then we're taking 60% status element chance. You come up to here, you grab the 8% damage, shoot across. This doesn't matter. What you're ultimately going is down this path to get the 100% critical hit damage. That's 100 necessary. You have to get that. So now let's go further up. We're going to come here. Spell damage, chance, max element stacks, which is huge. You have to get this. And the follow one is also max. So you're getting 10 stacks right here. And then this goes into the +2 element stacks inflicted. Come over to here. Element stack duration. Spell damage. Spell damage. And then you get Immortal Offering. Killing an enemy grants +5 damage for each element stack on it. So, I mean, this is huge. You're just stacking damage on top of damage, guys. Come off here to get resistance. Here to get 50% multiplied. So right now we can only get one of these because the way I have the build up, we actually had to sacrifice one of these, unfortunately. And then you can continue up here. More element damage. Element damage. More element damage. Wisdom. And then you come up here. And this is also huge here. Hits can usually only apply one type of element. When you have this, you can now provide 2. So if you don't know what that means, if you look at your skills, so Anomaly, for instance, will only do stasis damage. If you didn't have that passive, you would only be doing 1 element. So now that you have that passive, each spell that you have can inflict 2 different types of elements. And then you want to grab the 50% element damage over here to the right. Now this will break off down more. So we have stack duration time. We come down here to get max health. And then we break off here. Now a lot of people kind of look over this. But for the caster, this is actually huge. 4% damage for each nearby enemy within 4 meters range. And then you can bump that up to 5, right? Another 1% here. So this is 5% damage increase for every enemy that's around you. So when you're going through endgame content, you want to grab as many enemies as you can, group them all up, and then slaughter them. Because every enemy that's around you, you're gaining 5% damage for each individual enemy. And then the closer you get to the end of the expedition, you want to make sure you have a good bit of enemies still around you, and you want to drag those enemies to that final boss. Because you're going to gain that damage, while you're killing the final boss. And that's huge. And then you could take this one to actually lower it even more. Now, if you're not comfortable getting that close to enemies, that's up to you. This is a optional one. This just says, it goes from 4 meters to 2 meters. That's why I said earlier in the video that you need to be on top of your enemies, basically. This goes right up into the tenant points here. None of these matter. 15% material, 15% material. Then we get the branded burst, which is the tenant points. When you take the bonus node with it, this basically gives you 100% damage reduction. Every time you get hit, you lose a tenant point. So every time you take a hit from any source, you lose 20% off of that. This will all become irrelevant once they fix Life Leech, which we'll talk about. So then you come down here, grab the Global Life Leech, grab the Spell Life Leech. You come over here, grab Aether Damage, you grab the Aether Damage, then you grab Which Time Cannot Heal, which is huge. Every time your enemy is afflicted with stasis, you go ahead and do a 100% of that hit damage again after 1.5 seconds, and then you gain the bonus of 20% more damage. So this all just stacks on top of each other. When you're doing the DOTs, the stasis is constantly being reapplied, so you're getting an extra DOT hit, and when you combine that with the critical hit damage up here, you're pushing out so much DPS on this build that it's insane. Then you want to go ahead and grab the Force Shield, and then you want to get your other 5 element stacks here. Remember, you got base 10, and then there's another 10 here, which brings us up to 20, and then 25 and 30 over here. So you want to grab Dire Juncture, which just means you won't be getting one shot, basically. You only take 40% of the damage up front, and then the rest of it is 1 second after. It gives you basically time to Life Leech before dying, so you should never be getting one shot, pretty much. Although it does happen. I've been one shot before, so it does happen, but it is what it is. And then you can take that node up here. So that is the passives. I will leave a link in the description to, a further in-depth look at this on a third-party site. And now momentarily here, I do want to talk about the changes that we will be doing ultimately down the road. So once they fix this node right here, this node is huge for anyone wanting to play a caster build or a pure caster build. It's called Faith Leech, and it's currently broken right now. But what it does is Life Leech affects the force shield instead of health. So it works huge with this one down here, where you're doubling your max force shield and depleting all your health. So that's why I only have 6,000 HP, but I have 122,000 force shield. Once this works, you'll basically be unkillable on this build. Not only do you have the global life leech here, which is 2%, another 2% from spell damage, that's 4%. You're going to take the nodes up to it. So there's another 2% here, another 2% here, and then you can also get life leech on your gear or gems or however you see fit. So what's going to happen here is that we need 4 points to break off into this. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4 points to ultimately get Faith Leech. Well, we're going to get rid of Branded Burst. You're not going to need Branded Burst once this actually works. So you're actually going to gain 5 points from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'll get 5 points here. You'll need 4 points here. And then that gives you 1 point to play with. You can put that 1 point up here. You could put that 1 point down here for more spell damage. I'll probably put it up here personally for the 25% chance multiplier for element stacks inflicted. I don't even know if you need this. This might be overkill at that point. But the main point is, obviously, you need Faith Leech. And also, I didn't come down here and mention this, but you want to come down 1 more point here. And then this is another little secret node that I like here. It's 25% damage to enemies with impaired movement. So you're constantly CCing enemies, whether it be the freeze or whatever, stun, stasis, any impaired movement things, you automatically get another 25% damage. So this is all about stacking as much damage as you can, especially DOT damage, and it's all about crowd control. You want to use your crowd control ability, gather all the enemies up, and just literally destroy them. So hopefully you got the grasp of this. So far, if you have any questions regarding anything in the video so far, make sure to leave me a comment below. Finally, to wrap up, we'll go ahead and take a look at the overall gear and items which are going to be striving to get. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the equipment. Now, right off the bat, I just want to, state that this is end game, guys. This is something that's going to take you a large amount of time to get to. This is not something that's going to happen in a week or a month. This is something that you're looking for long-term goal-wise. I spent a lot of time rolling and re-rolling all of these items until they almost had all perfect stat rolls on them. This is something the average player simply is just not going to probably ever obtain. This is going to take a very significant amount of time for you to farm all the resources you need, especially the reagents for re-rolling all of this gear. So let's go ahead and just look at it. So starting right off, the helmet, you want to look for high force shield items. So we are pretty much using all sorcerer gear on this build because the sorcerer gear will yield you pretty much the highest force shield you have. As far as the gem socket, I believe they're adding a second gem socket to helmets. So you'll be able to have 2 gem sockets in a helmet, so you can put even more force shield on there. I currently have force shield on there. And then the static rolls are also important. So for instance, my static roll, the guaranteed roll on this is the 10% force shield recharge from health globes. So anytime you pick up a health globe, you're also going to replenishing your force shield. So if we look at the statistics on here, I'm not going to read every single one, guys. You can see it on the screen. But these are the statistics that you want to mainly focus on for this in particular build. You can see the force shield percent base. So not only do we have the percentile force shield base, but we also have the static stat line, the flat damage force shield on here. Cooldown reduction is huge. Willpower regeneration, 38% transfer time. So that's a pretty solid helmet. Now, if we look at the shoulders, this is actually a bug. I guess they plan on fixing this. This isn't something you're supposed to be able to attain. This was actually a unique item, right? The hackerish I'm sure some of you guys have seen this. This was actually a unique item, and I transformed the unique item into a legendary, and I was lucky enough to get 2 of them. So you can see the statistics on here. This will obviously change. You're not going to be able to obtain this once they fix it. So if you do have something like this now, hopefully you're allowed to keep it and they're not going to take it away from you or something. But I mean, you could just see all of the affixes on here. You cannot not use this. Like, yes, I understand that it only has 437 force shield. I probably could get something that has higher force shield on it, but I gain so many different bonuses on the affix rolls that I have to use this, right? So we do have 2 of those. Now let's move on to the arms here. So we do have force shield. Again, we have the base stat roll of wisdom on here. We have damage on here. We have rage and willpower cost reduction, toughness, and then just stacking force shield, guys. That's mainly what you want to do. Now when we look at our breastplate here, you can see, again, the raw force shield on here, and then I have 3 force shield gems. So technically, this breastplate has 9,700 force shield on it. And then you can see the static roll of the 11% force shield recharge from your health globes. And then, again, just stacking as much statistics that you can get on there. So if we look at the rings, now the rings are important because rings can have a static roll of critical damage. So you want to find a ring that has critical damage on it, the highest possible amount. So you can see that my ring here has 25% critical hit damage for a base roll, but then I also have critical damage rolled on it. So it has another 30% on there. So that's huge. And then again, once you get to end game and you start to make better items, you want to go for those element stacks inflicted. That is going to be on your rings, your necklace, and your belt. They all have the bonus affix on there. So you want to make sure that you have critical damage. You want to roll an item until you are getting that critical hit damage. Once you have the resources and the reagents to burn, you want to keep re-rolling until not only do you have that maxed out 30% crit hit damage, but you want to get the +2 element stacks as well. So again, looking at the other ring here, and then the same thing with the necklace. The necklace, my necklace in particular, had the base stat line of 23 toughness. It's got damage on it. It has aether damage. It has material damage. It has transfer time. And then I have it slotted with transfer time. All of your accessories will be transfer time, guys. So 25% transfer time, 25% transfer time. Well, I'm sorry, actually, this has willpower regeneration on it, but 25%. I mean, the only reason I have willpower on the belt is because I have transfer time on some of the other items, right? Yeah, so my helmet has transfer time on it, but depending on your stat rolls, you might actually have to put more transfer time on here. But so for the necklace, again, you can see that I wasn't as lucky because you can have a maximum of 2 element slots. I was only able to get 1. So I have 30% critical hit damage, but only +1 element stack. Now, the element stacks, basically, this just means that you're inflicting those stacks faster. So if we look at the belt now, again, 30% critical damage. This belt in particular had +16% spell damage. I'm sure I can get a better one, but the main objective here was the 30% critical hit damage plus the 2 element stacks. Next, the pants. Again, I mean, just this. I could say the same thing over and over again, guys. Basically, you want force shield, you want cost reduction, you want cooldown reduction, you want toughness. You want to max out those, as best you can with the stat rolls that you can get. The boots are apparently also getting gem slots in it. So once the boots, I think they're getting 2 gem slots as well. So you'll be able to put even more force shield on here. But you can see the main focus of boots is that you want to gain high force shield from your boots, but you also want to look for the move speed. I believe move speed is the only affix that is only on the boots. I haven't seen move speed on any other item. I could be wrong. You can correct me in the comments. But you want to make sure you have some kind of high-end move speed on here, or you're going to literally walk around like a turtle. Because going back to the spells, remember, we have no mobility, guys. We're not using Aether Jump. We have no mobility whatsoever. Finally, the weapon, we are actually using a sword. That way we have access to Bleeding Edge. So my sword does have Bleeding Edge. Or I'm sorry, we're using a sword so we can utilize Bleeding Edge. But then I have toxic damage slotted. It has critical hit damage. You want to make sure you're getting critical hit damage. That's the biggest thing on your weapon, is that critical hit. A bonus is the life leech. If you can roll numerous life leeches on this, that is absolutely perfectly fine. But there's nothing really more important on the weapon other than maxing out the critical damage and then slotting whatever spell gems you want to put on there. For instance, poison is my main element, so I have toxic damage on here. Now finally, to wrap it up, we do have the catalyst. So this allows us to use all the mage abilities, right? So if we were using a shield, we can't, right? If you wanted to go 100% block chance with block efficiency, well, now you can't because you need the catalyst to use the mage abilities. So we do have transfer time, and force shield regeneration rate on here. The main focus here is you want to get the lowest possible roll on the base stat line because a lot of people don't know this, so you want to pay attention. This is actually negative 50%, guys. It's negative 50%. I don't know if I have another one in my inventory right now. I do have one. This one is 56%. So when you're looking at the base stat roll on your catalyst, you actually want the lowest number, not the highest. I've had people come to me and be like, "Oh, I found a 75% transfer time reduction." Well, they're not noticing that it's a negative, not a positive. That's huge. You actually want to go in reverse here. So you'll see with the gems clearly say plus 25% transfer time reduction. The base stat line is a negative reduction. You're actually hurting yourself. So you want to make sure that you're getting the lowest one. This is the lowest one I found, so I'm guessing it doesn't go lower in this. So negative 50%. So basically this item is even, right? We're getting 50% from the gems, but the item itself has negative 50%. So as far as transfer time goes, this item actually breaks even. One important thing to note on the offhand, again, is that critical hit damage. This is a DOT critical hit damage build, guys. Damage over time, critical hit. So you want to boost your critical damage as high as possible. The highest I've been able to obtain so far is 536. So that wraps up the items. If you have any questions in particular with the items or, so far in this video, that pretty much sums up everything that we need to talk about. We're going to do a quick demonstration, I think, to end the video, so we'll go ahead and jump into a expedition with a treasure map so it's not super long, because I know this video is already getting lengthy. But this was an in-depth look at an endgame caster, so hopefully you've enjoyed it thus far. Hopefully you made it this far, and I'll show you the demonstration, and then we'll wrap up this video, guys. Alright guys, let's do a expedition here. We'll try to show you an example of how powerful this build is. So we'll go 187, we'll toss a map in here. And basically it all depends on your boss rolls, right? So whether you're doing a normal expedition or whatever the case may be, you can see we got a red chest here, a blue chest, and a champion chest. So these enemies are going to be a little tricky, all depending on what they are. So we got some casters here, so go ahead, drop your rotation down, make sure you're freezing. And you can see how fast they melt, so gather up all the enemies. It looks like we have archers here, so archers are always tricky because sometimes they will not CC. Make sure you're casting your rotation. And they're all dead. And then finally, it looks like we do have a boss here. Remember to cast your Bleeding Edge. You're not using Bleeding Edge for damage. You're using Bleeding Edge to transfer your willpower. So let's see what boss we got here. Again, keep an eye on your Bleeding Edge for your regeneration. Try to mow them down. And they're all dead. There you go. So that's a nice little showcase of showing you max level content 187. I mean, you could take it further and even put the modifiers on if you want. That's just totally up to you. So there you go, guys. Let's jump back into the video and finish her up. Alright guys, we're done. I know that video was a little long, but we wanted to really dive deep in there and go really in depth. I wanted to show you guys not only the endgame passive build and how to do the spells correctly as far as your spell rotations, but I wanted to look at the gear as well, and what I wanted to show you guys what a possible endgame character could look like. This is going to be very hard for normal people to obtain to get to this point in the game, and it's it comes down to the individual on how much time you want to invest in this game, because right now, I mean, you could just play whatever meta build is out there. So everyone is abusing Bleeding Edge, right? So you just toss in the passives, grab some minimal gear, and Bleeding Edge will do the work for you as far as that goes, and then you can accumulate better gear and then maximize Bleeding Edge to its full potential. Like I was in a game earlier and I literally saw someone hit on a Bleeding Edge crit for 40 million damage. Like obviously the company knows that Bleeding Edge is going to get tweaked and changed and whatnot. So this is going to be currently version 1 of this build. We'll call this the critical DOT Mage. So critical damage over time Mage will be this code name, because I'm sure I'll be putting out more videos as the game evolves regarding this specific build and loadout and any other changes that come along. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you share it with your friends. Again, I apologize. I mean, I know there's going to be people out there in the comments that are like, oh, fuck you, Gar, you said this isn't a Bleeding Edge build, Like, I know it's going to come up, but, I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it, guys. I mean, when you're sitting here spamming your abilities non-stop and, like, my willpower is just gone, I need something to balance that back. See how fast it goes back? And Bleeding Edge is the only thing that's going to do that for me. There's nothing else currently faster in the game that will accomplish that. So, I mean, it is what it is. You can hate me if you want, but at the same time, we're not using Bleeding Edge for damage. So yes, it is providing us damage, but it's not doing damage to the full potential that Bleeding Edge could do. So this is theoretically a build, especially a caster build, that someone that wants to actually play the game and still have fun with the game and not abuse Bleeding Edge in its current state. So you can hate me if you want, do what you want. The build works. I'm satisfied with it. I love this build. I've been playing it now for, like I said, 175 hours or something outrageous. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, guys. Make sure you share it with your friends. All the links are in the description to everything you need. Join my Discord. I'll actually share this file in my Discord, guys. If you want the JSON file, make sure you join my Discord. And the save file to this particular build and everything will be in the Discord. So I'll see you guys in there. I'll see you guys in the next video.